Before you start, it presupposed that we were in the liquid rather than headspace. And to change from modes, you have a dual system. From the run page, you go to change modes, and if we were going to change from liquid to headspace, we would do it here. But if you were in headspace, you would then have to make sure that we go to liquid to bring up all these features for liquid. Okay, now for methods, we need to select a front or back injection port for our particular method. So again, we're going to start from the run screen and go to settings, setup, configuration, run again, and then the injection mode. We had just done that. So hit OK. I'm just doing it again just to make sure we have the right one, because if you don't have the right one, you're expecting to go in the front injection port, it's going to go to the back injection port and disappoint you. Okay, to create a method, from the run page, we're going to go to settings and methods. And so there are 9 methods that we can choose from. And each method could be a different injection port, a different injection, whether split or splitless. And so I already have something in method 0. It'll bring up 5 other pages that we can go to. So if we start with the general, it tells us what the syringe volume is, 10 microliters. And some of this stuff is redundant. We put this in when we change the syringe. You should know that. And that's probably why it's in a default of 10 here. The analysis time will generally be your GC analysis time. Your fill speed would be dependent on the viscosity of your solvent in the sample. So if it's not very viscous, it can pick it up very quickly. But if it's very viscous, you might want to pick it up slowly. So you would want to then increase that up to some value. And it will draw it up slowly so you don't get air gaps in your syringe. And you can even go down from 0.1, I believe, probably up to 100. But we'll leave it at 1. That seems to be the default. Viscosity delay is after it picks up its sample, how long do we wait for all the sample to, in the event there still is an air gap, because of the viscosity, the solvent's coming up so slowly. How long do you want it to wait in the sample? 5 seconds seems to be fairly good. And once you've gone through all that, you go to exit, and now we can go on to the next page, solvent wash. The pre-wash cycles, it will go into the solvent 2 times, and it will draw up 10 microliters and dispose that to waste. The pre-wash mode is prior to injection. And then the post-wash cycles is after it's made as injection, we want to go over to the solvent again and do that 2 more times. 10 microliters, and that's after you inject, the post-wash mode. And so that's typical autosampler options. Internal standard, enable whether you have an internal standard. This has the ability not to only pick up your sample, but go over to an internal standard and draw up some of the internal standard. And they give you options of whether you want it on or not, and how much internal standard you want to draw up, gap mode, whether it's when you want some air in there, and how much air do you want in there. And that's air between your sample and your internal standard. So some people may just want to go directly over. Some people may want to draw up sample, draw up half a microliter of air and then draw up the internal standard. So that's what those options are all about. Again, that's an optional thing, and that will either be enabled or disabled. And again, now to get out of this page, I gotta go all the way down to exit. The sample volume will be how much sample you want to draw up in there. And the fill volume is, okay, we're going to draw up 1 microliter, but we're going to draw up 3 microliters and come back down to 1 microliter just to kind of pre-wet the syringe inside. Again, you can have an air volume for injecting your sample. Sample washes is how many times you want to go into the sample and dispose that to waste. And the pull-up strokes is once you're in the sample, the plunger will go up, 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 and in this case it will do that. And that's to aspirate any air bubbles out of the sample. We have 5 that seem to work pretty good. And then injection. The injection speed is how fast. Agilents like to get the solvent and sample out of the syringe as quickly as possible, so we want to go in and out real quick. But when we're in and we're dispensing the solvent, we want the plunger to snap down really fast. In some applications, maybe on column, or if you have a PTV, you may want to slowly inject the material into your injection port, and so lower volumes of microliter rates will be put in there for that. But we want it to go down very quickly here. I don't personally like dwells. That's how long it sits in before it makes the injection, and after it makes the injection, how long it stays in the injection port. I've chosen for this method just to go in, inject, and come right back out. But again, the user has that option. When we're ready to run, you can either run a single injection, or we can do a sequence and do an automatic run. A single injection. The first one is how we start the injections, the whole process. If we hit OK here, this will then take method 1, go to sample A1. If we chose an internal standard to be active, it'll go there. We'll do pre-washes here. So everything is pretty much spelled out in the single injection. So before you hit OK right away, make sure that this is the method that we want. We went back, we created a method. The method that I created before was method 0. So we might want to put method 0 in there. So it will go in and load that. We have something in A6 for that test, and let's just leave it in A6 so we can change where that sample is going to be. And the internal standard is not activated, and then the pre-wash will be A, and the post-wash will be A. But we can change it. We can make that B or C, as long as we have make sure we have vials in there. And then when we're ready to run, execute it, we'll hit OK. And this has a double handshake. So not only this is going to wait for the GC to say ready, but and also when it makes the injection, it will then start the GC. So it's got the double handshake. It's waiting for the GC to be ready, and the GC is waiting for this to say yes, I injected. So this will not take off until the GC is ready, which is a very good feature. So in this particular case, if we hit OK, it will go on. So we can do that. And these are going to be the 2 pre-washes that we set up in our method. So it appears the whole concept is everything has pretty much a guide for the file finder. So everything generally lines up very well. In our method, we designated one sample wash to waste. And this tells us what's going on. And these are the 5 pumps that we designated in the method. See, it started the GC. On the Autosampler, we're going back and do 2 post washes. This time in vial C because we chose that. That ends the single injection. So if we want to run a sequence, we have to set up a sequence. So from the run page, go to settings, and then sequences. And so step 1 is essentially sequence number 1. And if we hit OK, it will have the same things that we saw in the single injection. What method we want to use. 0. Now this asks us what is the first sample and what is the last sample in your sequence. You have 6 samples will be A1 through A6. We have something in A6 now, and so it's going to be A6 to A6. Cycles is how many times do we want to inject from the same vial, and I chose 6 for doing some relative standard deviation experiments, but if we want to do 1 injection per sample, that cycle would be 1. If we enable the internal standard, this tells us where that internal standard is. And again, the pre-wash, post-wash samples, where are we injecting into which injection port. Again, a lot of these things are redundant. I don't know what happens if we previously chose the front and we want now this to be back. Would it go to be back? I'm not sure at this point. Name is only included in there if we have the software running. This is all manual that we're doing, so we put nothing in there. Then we hit OK. Now it's asking us to save step 1. So if we have a different method that we want to run, we then go down to Tools and hit OK, and then we can add New. Now it's going to add a new step. And now we have a different step, and it will have all the same things, but we may want to use another injection port. So I'm guessing in this particular case it will take that injection port, or we may want a different method in this one here. So the different steps and the different sequences. And if we want to remove something, we'll go into Tools, and then we're going to remove. Now we remove step 2, sequence number 2. And so those are the sequence numbers for the different sequences. So coming back up to the top page, now we're going to run a sequence. We built it. Now we'll go to automatic run, and then it's going to ask us, if we hit start auto run, it's going to start the sequence. But we may have more than one step or more than one sequence. It'll tell us what's the first one, what's the last one. Since we only have one in there now, one will be there. We'll run all the samples, yes. And so to start that sequence, again, you hit auto run, and it will run through the method for every one, A1 through A6 or A6, however we designated that into the sequence. So that is a brief view of setting up the instrument and running single and sequences. If you do have the dual system, one thing you're going to have to change will be the vial guide. And there are 2 screws here, and the vial guide will come off for liquid. This is the one for headspace. It's a little bit bigger, so it can pick up vials, and that will be inserted on when we do headspace. Again, we're going to adjust, feel the needle down below, make sure it's just at the edge, not sticking out or too far in. We went over that earlier. And make sure that if you do have to raise and lower that, make sure you check all the way up that it's not getting stuck. And so that is our little quick guide for the HTA.
Great.